Hey, it's Kelly from paperbeadrollers.com, and today's tutorial is a multi-strand paper bead bracelet with a flower centerpiece. Now, of all of the videos that I've done so far, and I think we've got about 65 on the channel, this is probably the closest to my personal style, from the colors to just the way it looks. I absolutely love this one. So let's get rolling. This bracelet is simple, yet elegant. Rows of micro-sized paper beads in varying colors make it perfect for your favorite outfit color combinations. It's so versatile, I'm making one for myself, my mom, and my two nieces. You only need 3 tools for this project: scissors, pliers, and a crimping tool. You'll need beading wire. I'm using 7-strand Beadalon in gold. A centerpiece for your bracelet. I purchased these delicate gold flowers from Joann Fabrics. A clasp, I chose this magnetic gold clasp, and 2 jump rings. You'll also need about 6 crimps. You'll need 3 different types of beads for this project. You'll need these micro paper beads for your strands. I used about 15 on each strand, so for a 7.5-inch bracelet, I used 90 beads. And 2 cone-shaped beads to join the strands. You will also need 10 seed beads or 2mm traditional beads. Now the size of these can vary, but what is important is that you will be able to put 3 strands through the bead hole. Now let's take a look at the strips you'll need to make these paper beads. For the micro beads, your strips should be 1/8 inch in width by 4 inches in length. Now this is a very tiny strip for a very tiny bead. I used the green paper bead roller from paperbeadrollers.com, which is the smallest diameter I sell. For the cone beads, I used a strip that is 3/4 inch width and 11 inches long. Now you can see that here. However, my 9-year-old niece Katie has a much smaller wrist than me. She'll need a 6-inch bracelet. So if I used a 3/4 inch bead on her 6-inch bracelet, I would only have room for about 4 micro beads per strand. Well, that is just not enough. It's not going to look right. So I took these strips and I cut them off where the width was at the 1/2-inch mark. And that created a smaller cone that looks like this. Now in this tutorial, I'll be making Katie's bracelet, so it'll be a total of 6 inches long. You can adjust the length of your strands for the size of bracelet you're making. First, we'll weave our traditional beads together to make a connector piece between the flower and the strands. Cut about a 9-inch piece of beading wire and grab 5 of your traditional or seed beads. Pick up the first bead and position it about 2 or so inches from the end of the wire. Now on this shorter side of the wire, pick up the second bead. Take the long end of the wire and feed it through the bead from the opposite direction. Now pull the wire tight until the beads are side by side like this. You may need to use your pliers to pull the wire tight. It should make a nice kind of circle to connect those beads. Make sure that that first bead stays about 2 inches or so from the end of the wire. We want just a small piece left above the 5 beads you're about to string. Continue this process until you have all 5 beads lined up on your wire and connected by the little circles. Make one of these connectors for each side of the bracelet, so 2 total. Now we'll use a crimp to loop the short end of the wire onto the flower. Pick up the crimp and thread the wire through one of the flower petals. Take the wire around and back through the crimp. Now sometimes it's easier for me to do this with the pliers, especially when I'm working with a shorter piece of wire. Pull the bead tight to the flower and use the crimping tool to set your crimp. Now I like to use the second indent on the crimping tool and make sure that the rounded side of the crimp is facing up. Now I think that looks just like a little bead, but if you want, you can put a crimp cover over it for more decoration. Now we can string our micro beads. I'm going to use the same color pattern on every strand. We'll start with blue, then tan, then green, and then brown. I'll repeat this pattern until my strand is the correct length. For this 6-inch bracelet, I'll need 10 beads. Now I'm going to feed the wire up through the wide end of my cone bead. Since all 3 strands will be connected, I need to leave just a little wiggle room. I don't want this last bead right up against the cone. I'll add a crimp to my wire and loop the wire back down through the crimp and through the cone bead if the wire is long enough. Watch out here, because if you pull it too tight, you'll pull the wire right out of the crimp. If it helps, you can go ahead and put your jump ring in this loop so that you can pull it tight. But all 3 strands will go on that jump ring, so I find it works better if I add the jump ring last. It's totally up to how you want to do it. Now I'll attach my middle strand. I only need about 1.5 inches of beads, so my beading wire is going to be about 3 inches long, leaving enough room for me to loop and crimp it on both ends. I'm going to thread this wire up through the middle bead. Now, this is going to be the 3rd pass through, so if it's very difficult to get your wire in, grab one of your beading needles and push it through just to make some room and kind of move those other pieces around. Then you should be able to get your wire in nice and easy. Once the wire is through the bead, add a crimp, loop the wire around the next flower petal, back down through the crimp, and crimp it in place. Now you can just cut off your tail here because it is probably not going to go back through your bead a 4th time. Tighten that bead up to the top and you're ready to string the micro beads. Attach the 3rd strand the same way. Now on this strand, I'm using the same color pattern, but I'm starting with the brown beads, so all of my colors won't be right next to each other. They'll be one off. When you reach the length of strand you need, feed the wire up through the cone bead, put on the crimp, and loop that wire back through the crimp. You want your loop to be about the same size as the 1st strand so that your finished bracelet looks neat. Then you can string your micro beads. This time I began with the green bead. Just like you did with the other 2, when you get the length of strand you need, run the wire up through the cone bead, make your loop, and crimp it in place. Now, if you haven't already put the jump ring on these loops, now is the time. I'm going to capture all 3 of the loops on my jump ring. Then I'll put the magnetic clasp on as well. Now here's where it can get a bit tricky. That magnetic clasp wants to attach itself to your pliers, and when it moves suddenly, it can knock that jump ring right out of your hand. Ask me how I know? Yeah, because it's happened to me. So be ready and don't get frustrated. Once everything is on, close up that jump ring and the first side of your bracelet is finished. Now you can complete the other side of your bracelet using the exact same method we just did. Be sure to trim or hide all of the loose tails that you have on your piece, and you'll have a gorgeous bracelet to wear. Now I've also designed a necklace to match this bracelet. It's a very similar process to how I made this, but if you would like to see a separate tutorial on how to finish off this necklace, leave me a request in the video comments here on YouTube. Make sure you've clicked the subscribe button and also click that bell button if you'd like to be notified when new tutorials go up. And if you love this tutorial, share it with your friends on social media to spread the paper bead and handmade jewelry love. Happy rolling!